Collard greens are a nutritious southern meal with a rich history. They're also a wonderful traditional meal for New Year's Day. We eat them every year with black-eyed peas and cornbread. Now, I've never liked collard greens when I was a kid, but I love them now because my wife really knows how to cook them. So in this video, we're going to learn all about collards, how to grow them and harvest them, and most importantly, how to cook them in a delicious way that everyone will love. So let's get to it. Collards are members of the Brassica family, a family of plants that include cold weather tolerant vegetables like cabbage, kale, and broccoli. The cool thing about collards is you can grow them in fall, winter, and early spring when most other vegetables can't survive the cold weather. In fact, collards do better in cold weather because there's less insect pressure, and the frosty weather actually makes the leaves taste sweeter. Collards are known as a traditional southern meal. When many people in the South subsisted off of food from their own garden, collards were a handy vegetable to have in colder months when other options weren't as available. Though today they are known in the United States mainly as a southern dish, collards were grown in ancient Greece, and the Romans were eating collards in the 1st century when Christ was born. Collard greens are sometimes confused with other greens like turnip and mustard greens, but collards have a milder flavor than turnip greens, which tend to be bitter, and mustard greens, which have a spicy mustard kick. I prefer collards to mustards or turnips, and the way my wife cooks them, even my kids enjoy them, and they enjoyed them when they were little too, which is amazing because most kids tend to be finicky. Collards need full sun. I've had good success growing collards in raised beds and containers in my backyard, which gets about 6 to 8 hours of sunlight every day. Those big green leaves on the collards really like to soak up the sun. So plant your collards in full sun and give them lots of space. You can plant 1 collard per square foot, but I recommend that you give them more space because they grow up to 4 feet tall and 2 feet wide. Plant them too close and they'll be crowded. I recommend that you plant your collards 18 to 24 inches apart. If you're planting in rows, you'll need enough space, maybe 3 feet, in order to get through the rows. But if you're planting them in the raised bed, like I typically do, just do 1 every 2 square feet or so. If you plant them closer together, and you can do that, but if you plant them closer, harvest every other plant when they're starting to grow together. Go ahead and pull the whole plant out and leave the remaining plants there, and they'll have plenty of space to grow. The big green leaves of your collards need a lot of nitrogen. A nice organic fertilizer that works well with collards is blood meal. Sprinkle a couple of tablespoons of blood meal at the base of the plants and then water it in so the roots can absorb the nutrients. Fertilize about once a month. Collards need 1 to 2 inches of water a week, depending on how hot it is and on how well your soil drains. Use a rain gauge to keep track of how much rain you receive in a week. Then make up the difference by watering. Water at the base of the plants. Avoid wetting the leaves. Too much moisture on the leaves can cause problems. So how do you know how much water from your water hose equals 1 inch of rain? Here's how I do it. First, time how many seconds it takes to fill up a 5-gallon bucket with your favorite water hose and sprayer at the pressure you normally use for watering and using the setting that you normally use for watering. I usually use the shower setting on my watering lawn. Now divide the number of seconds by 10. Now this is not an exact formula. If you're a math person, this might drive you crazy because I'm not giving you an exact formula. There is an exact formula. Comment below if you know the exact formula. I want to make things easy. And this is close and it's easy. So divide the number of seconds by 10. That's about how many seconds you need to water each collard plant in your garden to give 1 inch of water. Now remember, they're not going to need as much water if it's really cold outside. And they're not going to need as much water when they're babies. So don't drown them poor little seedlings. Your plants are just like people. They need less when they're little, more when they get big. Also, you don't want to give your plants a whole week's worth of water in one day, right? That would be like drinking 7 gallons of water on Monday and then you not drinking anything else for the rest of the week. You want to spread out the water over 2 to 3 times a week. So for me, it takes 180 seconds to fill up my 5-gallon bucket at the pressure I use. 180 seconds divided by 10 is 18 seconds. That means it takes about 18 seconds to water 1 square foot around 1 collard plant with 1 inch of water. But I'm not going to give a whole inch of water all at once. So I'm going to water my collard plant, let's say 3 times a week. So I'll divide 18 seconds by 3, and that gives me 6 seconds. So I can hold the spray wand near the base of the plant, and I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, while I gently water. Then I'll move to the next collard plant and I'll do it again. And I'll do this for each of my collard plants. And that's really all it takes. And hopefully, God will send me some rain each week and I can water less. Or if I get enough rain, I may not need to water at all, depending on how much rain we get. So collards take 60 to 75 days to mature, about 2 months. If you plant them in mid-October, they should be ready to eat by New Year's Day. And if you live in zone 7B, where I do, they seem to grow just fine in that cooler weather. And having them ready on New Year's Day is perfect because collards and black-eyed peas are the traditional Southern cuisine for the New Year's Day holiday. Tradition says that eating collard greens on New Year's Day will bring wealth all year long because the chopped up leaves look like folded dollar bills. I don't know about that, but any excuse to eat collards is fine with me. Now, when it's time to harvest your collards, you can harvest the whole collard plant if you want, or you can just pick as many leaves as you need, starting at the bottom of the plant and working your way up. If you leave enough leaves on the collard plant, it will continue to grow and it will continue to produce. And that way you can harvest collards again and again and again. It's really up to you. You can store collard leaves in your refrigerator for up to 5 days. But it's best not to wash your collards until you're ready to use them. This will help them keep longer. If you must wash them, make sure to dry them thoroughly before storing. Wet or moist collards will rot quickly, even in the refrigerator. When you're ready to cook your collards, rinse them well in your sink. Then tear out the tough stems and any bad places on the leaves. You can put the stems in your compost pile or feed them to your chickens. Our chickens love them. Now, place your collards in a big pot on the stove. Add enough water to cover them thoroughly. Add a couple of tablespoons of salt and about 4 1 by 4 inch strips of Hormel salt pork. Now, we like using Hormel salt pork the best. Unfortunately, we couldn't find any in time for this video. Hope that they're not having a shortage of it because we plan to use Hormel salt pork for our New Year's Eve dinner. But for this video, we had to substitute another kind of salt pork. And so you can use ham, bacon, you can use any salt cured pork. For this video, we used some smoked bacon that we had, but we really like Hormel salt pork the best. Let us know in the comments if you use some kind of different meat and how you like it compared to these other things. We made this recipe with bacon and it was fine. We liked it just fine. Not as flavorful to me as the salt pork we normally use, but it was definitely just fine. But if you use salt pork, be sure to rinse it. I've made it before and I forgot to rinse it, and it just sort of puts a funny flavor into the collards. Wash the meat off first. The salt that you need, don't worry, the salt is absorbed into the meat. There's plenty of flavor in it, but there's something up on the outside of the meat that maybe can impart a bad flavor into your collards, and you don't want that. So just go ahead and rinse it off really good. And also cut the skin off of the back, and then cut the meat into 1-inch strips that are about 4 inches long. The package usually is about 4 inches long, so you just have to cut them into strips. Next, you want to score the meat side, score it on the meat side of the strips, and this just makes more surface area so that more flavor can transfer into your collards. Now, throw the strips or the bacon or whatever pork you add, throw it all into the pot with the water and the collards. Now, bring the collards to a boil and then reduce to a slow simmer and let them cook for 1 to 3 hours, depending on how tough the leaves are. Tougher leaves that are older will take longer to cook, but you can still cook them, just cook them longer and they'll be fine. Younger leaves are tender and they will cook faster. Once your collards have cooked for an hour or so, you can taste test them and you can see if they need more salt, and you can also gauge how long they'll need to cook. The more experience you have cooking collards, the more you will begin to tell how long you're going to need to cook them. Now, some people like to add other ingredients like onions or vinegar or hot sauce. I don't like them that way. To me, those other ingredients, they just sort of add off taste and smells, and I just prefer the simple flavor of collards mixed with cured salt pork. Some people say that collards really smell bad when they cook. They do have a distinctive flavor, and until you get used to it, you might say that it sort of smells bad. But the thing is, that's the way a lot of foods are. When I was a kid, the smell of onions wasn't a good smell. But once I ate and learned that the taste of the food with the onions in it's really good, now when I smell that, it makes my mouth water. And the same is sort of true with collards. Once you have tasted them and really love the taste of them, when you smell them cooking, it tells your body that it's going to get a treat really soon. So, but if the smell of the collards cooking, or any other kind of food like cabbage or anything like that, if it bothers you, you could always set up a pot outside on your porch or your balcony or in your yard, cook it on the grill, anything like that, so that the smell is outside. But we don't mind it at all. It just tells my body and everyone in our family something really good is coming. We enjoy collards at many different times during the year, especially when you're craving good old traditional Southern comfort food. But we always eat collards on New Year's Day as we gather around the table and we recall our blessings from the previous year and we look forward to the promise of the coming year. One tradition that we started, we put a big mason jar on our counter and we cut out little strips of paper, and all throughout the year, whenever something happens that we want to thank God for, whenever we experience something that we would say is a blessing in our life, we'll just take that pen and we'll write it down on that little strip of paper, fold it up and drop it in the mason jar. And so all year long, we're writing down some of the little blessings that we're experiencing in life and putting them in the mason jar. And by the end of that 12 months, that whole jar is usually filled up full of our little blessings. And then when we gather around the table on New Year's Day, we eat our collards and black-eyed peas, and when we finish the meal, we take that jar and dump it out on the table. And then we go around the table, and each person takes a strip of paper and opens it up, and we'll read that little blessing, and we will recount all the blessings that we remember from the previous year. And it's a great way to give praise to God and to feel thankful and to remember that God is going to be with us in the coming year. Collard greens, black-eyed peas, cornbread, and pork all go together perfectly for a delicious Southern meal that you can eat any time of the year, but especially on New Year's Day. Now, whatever you believe about these New Year's traditions, there's one thing that's certain. God is good, and God takes care of us throughout the year. Even in the trials and disasters that are inevitably part of our life in a broken world, God is there, flavoring life with his little blessings, like the black-eyed peas and the fat back that many find unappetizing. Others, with a little faith and creativity, find these things to be a nourishing comfort food. And it's all about how you look at it. If you make up your mind and have faith and trust in God, you see that even when bad things are happening, you're not alone. God is there with you. So do you have faith to believe that God is there? Or have you already decided that you've been abandoned and that you're without hope? Some people think that we don't have any choice in that matter, that our life is what it is. But what I find is there's one thing you always have a choice about. You can't control what happens to you from outside influences. Things are going to happen. People you can't control may do something to hurt you or to negatively impact your life. But there's one thing you can control. It's how you respond to those things that happen to you. One of the most important ways you can respond is by having faith in God. Because the truth is, you're going to face hard times in your life of one type or another. Sickness, injury, financial hardships, the loss of someone you love, the loss of your job. These things come upon all of us. You've got to have faith. And it doesn't take much, just a little bit. Jesus said, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can do incredible things, or you can overcome incredible obstacles, incredible problems. So we just have to remember, hang in there. Hang in there. You're not alone. Even if it feels like it, God is with you. And so, from me and my family to yours, I want to wish you a happy new year. May your faith help carry you in the coming year. And always remember, God loves you, and so do I. Now, let's get out there and grow and be fruitful.